We're back with another episode of AI Right, and we've got Megan and Andy here with us. How are we both?
Hello, hello. Very good. Riding off the high of the first Scotland World Cup victory of my lifetime.
Oh, was that
Of
of
yeah.
everyone's lifetime?
Yes, of my lifetime as well.
Yeah.
I was,
Yep.
8 the last time it was on, and I don't think we won a game then, so yeah, it was parties all over the city in Glasgow anyway. I was watching all my social media of all
Think
the
about how mental
bagpipes.
it'll be when we win the World Cup.
I
We
was,
basically have, Andy. We basically won it. This is what it feels like.
I mean,
For
I thought
other
we won by
countries
getting
with
there.
higher
Yeah, I know.
chances.
It's pretty. I know it's pretty good. So
did you see the guy
goal.
playing the bagpipes outside the park bar in Finiston at 4:30 in the morning?
I did
I
not.
feel
but
quite sorry for the punters that never stayed up for the game and just
Yeah, I know exactly. It
that.
just sounds spot on. Kind of. That's it. Par for the course.
Definitely
so
admitting to only catching up to the match at post 8 a.m. that morning. Doesn't make me any less of a supporter.
patriotic.
Just have to get some sleep.
I'll raise you one better. I've not actually had time to watch any of it at all. I just know
Any
the
of it at
score.
all, even highlights.
No, exactly.
Oh,
Just
come on, Andy.
flat-
You can-
exactly.
you can
So
find 10
I'm the least
minutes.
patriotic among us.
You didn't miss much. You didn't miss much, but the main thing was that we won. So yeah,
Yeah, I think
Well,
it
that
can be
was-
very.
that was
It,
That was
it
roughly
was
the summary
very
from the
safely condensed into 10 minutes. Like you didn't need the rest. It was
Yeah.
good.
Okay, cool. I will. Well, by the time I get round to it, the next match will have been played, which I
The ti-
hope to watch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, by the time this comes out, hopefully we're through. We should be get a good chance of being through already just by winning that first game. But yeah, it could be the first time ever to get out the group stages.
Oh, we could have made
Um,
ourselves so much safer with a decent goal difference. Anyway, a win is a win. We'll take it.
I can't believe we're complaining
Exactly.
about goal. That's such a Scottish thing, isn't it? The fact the first time we've won in the World Cup and we're like complaining about the goal difference.
You just want to be a little bit secure. You know, like other countries that have actual
Yeah, it could be
Guys,
taken
prospects here.
I know you beat this record and stuff, but you could have done it better.
No, I am. The joy is the overwhelming emotion. What
Ex-
a feeling.
Exactly. And Andy, you've been at the AI summit in London last week, and you were speaking.
Yes, I was. I was on a. We had a little round table with CoreWeave Weights and Biases and me.
Nice.
Which was fun on the first day, and then the second day, I gave a talk on Agent Ops,
Very
Very
cool.
good.
the latest iteration of the Ops family. So I was talking about observability, safety, and control in production AI. So I was talking about a lot of stuff we're doing in the bank, but also kind of stuff I've been researching and writing about for the book, etc. more generally. So it was relatively well received. It's the first time I've had a talk and I've had a queue of people come to speak up afterwards, which I thought was quite a good sign.
Oh,
That's a
Um,
good feeling, yeah.
And only one of them said like that was awful. I just wanted to tell you in person. No, I'm joking. But it was good. That was good. It was very very good, and lots of networking, lots of good takeaways which you can maybe look round to. But I kind of, despite never attending any talks other than my own, I did learn a lot from people in the network and sort of other things. So it was good.
So
Quite
you
well
managed to
attended.
network effectively, but you were fully selfish and didn't go to MDLCs.
Yeah,
Love that.
exactly. I was networking so hard that I literally could not get into anything.
I
Are
think
the
most people that are
talks-
speakers do the same. To be fair.
Yeah, definitely. Are the talks all published, like online? Can you catch
No,
up?
don't think so.
No.
And it's actually quite expensive
Okay.
for the tickets. It's a
Oh,
couple of grand.
alrighty. Well,
These
that's
things are
an
expensive.
opportunity I've missed.
You know,
I was going to
But,
say, was there quite a few people from the community up here in attendance, or was it mostly?
there was a few. There was a few actually. There was a few kind of other financial services colleagues. Some big hitters like I know Paul Donga, who's head of responsible AI at NatWest Group. He's not from up here. He's now based in
Yeah.
London, but he was speaking. There was a few others I'd met, old colleagues that are in the network. Yeah, there's a lot of obviously people. It's quite a relatively global thing actually.
Yeah, it's
Phew.
big. We had quite a lot of people. We had some people from R&D. We had quite a lot of people
Yeah.
taking
It-
lots of notes and bringing them back, which I'm very grateful for because I didn't manage
Yeah.
to make it.
I would say that it's not it's not kind of a very technical conference, but it's also not super high level AI washing business speak. It's kind of nicely in the middle. So I kind of like it for that, and I like that the people that come are generally like really good sort of people in the community, as I was saying. So it's like, you do learn a lot from them. So I actually find it's kind of in a nice sweet spot. Some
So
conferences
your
are
queue of questioners had good chat, good question.
a great chat, yeah. And one
Excellent.
one big takeaway I actually had from speaking to so many people was, I think people are a lot further along in the journey of productionizing these solutions than I thought they would be. So I think there's still a lot to learn, and people are clearly, they're struggling with, well, they're tackling challenges around scale and observability and evals and all the stuff we know and love. But a lot of them have actually had that breakthrough moment where they've got their first apps into production, they're doing it at scale. Speaking of like retailers from Poland and stuff who said they were like, no, we've got hundreds of thousands of customers using our apps daily, and it's all kind of AI driven chat. Other ones were talking about using AI in a procurement processes. Financial services was a big use case, so it was good. But I think so I've seen more progress than I thought on that side, which was heartening. What's clear though is there's still big challenges. Things like governance, the monitoring, observability piece, as I mentioned, that which I'm kind of super passionate about just now. But that's a huge thing because I think people just don't know exactly how to monitor these things yet. It's like with
And is
supervised
that
machine learning, it was so easy.
is that governance in the like regulated industry sense or the responsibility and ethics sense? Like what kind of
For
angle?
for me, it was more regulated industries that I was
Yeah.
speaking to in that point.
Yeah.
But I think it's a lot of stuff that ties over. So it's even stuff like to be EU AI Act compliant, all the stuff you need to apply to high risk use cases that applies to any industry. It just so happens in financial services you're thinking about a lot of these things anyway. But just even things about, how do you maintain good hygiene around your AI inventory? What's the cleanest way to have an AI inventory when every single tool you use now has AI in it? What does it mean when an auditor or regulator comes to you and says, how many AI use cases do you have? It's actually quite a nebulous concept. There's
Yeah, I
ways you
find it very
can,
difficult in the context not just of how many applications have an AI feature, they all call them the same thing. Like it's the same variant of about 4 or 5 different words, and you're like, which one are we talking about? Are we talking about this flavor of this tool or the other one? And
I know,
everyone just needs to get some new naming
I know,
conventions
the
out
name
there.
the namespace is clouded. There's a lot of namespace collision. There is definitely.
Everything is called Copilot. I'm gonna say it out loud. Everything is
Every
called
every
Copilot.
it is. But no, it was so, so it was super interesting for that. And then yeah, some really cool technical stuff I heard about as well. Some interesting projects, open source stuff I might be looking at helping with. So it's great. I really enjoyed it. AI Summit's one of my favourite. Yeah.
Very good. Well, today we're starting off our conversation. We're chatting about Anthropic's Fable and the recent news of its release and subsequent ban. Which one of these wants to get us started on the kind of updates of where it's at?
I vote Megan.
Megan's particularly
Yeah,
passionate.
yeah.
Yeah.
I have just found the news cycle on this delicious as an observer. It has gone from hype at 100 miles an hour when we were talking about the Mythos model and what it could mean and the safety concerns, and the general kind of marketing from Anthropic is that this was too dangerous for general release. We're going to have it launched across a number of controlled partners and let them investigate and see to what extent it is possible to control its release. And then, yeah, we then saw Fable, which is basically a Mythos model with some safety controls over the top of it. So they've essentially added a layer of classification, and any intent that's classified within a prompt in a kind of bioweapons kind of angle, aspects to do with security, have then been forced away from using the Mythos level model into lower grade models instead. So it's a controlled way of putting Mythos out into the world. There were lots of discussions about to what extent they'd kind of overstepped with the security. They've, for example, prevented people who are looking into doing LLM research and their own kind of frontier model development. They've kind of categorised them the same as some of these really obviously egregious, unsafe categories. And there was a lot of conversation about whether or not that was the right thing for them to have done? Was that anti-competitive? But then all of this got blown out of the water by the US government deciding to categorise this as basically a supply chain threat and put a legal mandate out that Anthropic could not allow any non-US citizen to have access to the models, and that didn't matter whether they were in the US or not, and has had some quite funny conclusions, meaning that Anthropic's own staff, including their CEO, cannot use their Mythos-grade models. So Anthropic, in a statement that they've released, they said they had no choice but to rescind access to all users. I think that's because they don't have a clear way of credentialing people to identify whether or not they are a US citizen. And they have said that they were shared a kind of piece of information from the US government about the model having been able to be hijacked or, used in a way that they hadn't intended, Fable specifically. They query that. They don't believe that that's actually been demonstrated by the US government, and they're apparently trying to work that through. But net result at the moment is none of us have access. So yeah, what a ride it's been.
So the Fable stuff was really interesting because there was so much excitement about it. There were so many videos of Fable versus previous Sonnet models, Sonnet 4, or Opus, 4.7 and stuff. Saying look at the high fidelity, look how smart it is, look at these amazing simulations or apps it's building and stuff. So everyone's super excited, and can I just say, we should all be called super forecasters, because we literally spoke about this a couple of episodes ago. Concentration risk, supply chain risk.
We did.
And it was just, and they laughed at us. Who's laughing now? I know.
I think there were two ways we called this. One was they overhyped the marketing, and the boy that cried wolf story was going to play out. Lo and behold, here it's come. And then yes, we need a sovereign AI model right now.
Yes.
Right now.
there is a project kicking off about this actually. I don't know how much is public, but I think it is pretty public. But there's a lot kind of happening in that space. The challenge is though, got a long way to go to catch up. A lot of infrastructure, a lot of training, a lot of kind of people, energy, effort. So it's going to be interesting to see if we can catch up. But I think we can. If Scotland can score in the World Cup, we can create a UK LLM.
So interestingly, obviously the CEO from Anthropic came out and asked about the slowdown for global use of AI. Was that before or after the ban was served?
Before?
I don't know actually.
Because I only saw that in the news last week and I thought, that's timely.
I think it was before, but it's a really good question. I don't actually know. We should have our fact-checking agent run and find out. That's a good point, yeah. And this was over safety concerns again, right? Because
yeah, well, there was different. I think it broke into 3 different areas. I can probably pull the points up. I wasn't sure if you guys had saw it, but there was mostly safety concerns like mass job displacement, stuff like that they thought.
Yeah, it was definitely before. So I think from about 5th of June, that was when Dario Amodei was starting to talk about how the labs might need to slow down because we need society and governments to catch up in terms of regulation and figuring out what the implications of these models are going to be. Then Fable was launched a few days later, which is kind of hard to put those two narratives together. And then the ban happened over the weekend just now.
Yeah. It's really interesting that this is... I could totally, on the one hand, get why this is a position from Anthropic, and on the other, can't, to your point, Megan. So on the one hand, Dario Amodei and everyone, and at the top leadership of Anthropic, all the indications are they totally believe the singularity is coming, right? Or something like it. So Dario Amodei's article, I think it's a couple of years ago now, Machines of Love and Grace. Have you both read or heard of this? So he had this kind of very long essay online where he talks about an optimistic scenario for AI becoming not super intelligent necessarily, but more intelligent than now, and sort of what that would mean. And he talks about having 100 years of scientific progress in 10 years. What would that mean? What diseases would we cure? How would it change the economy? And it's all very positive, obviously, because he was trying to articulate a positive vision. A lot of it's quite out there, quite wacky, but he was sort of trying to say that. So I think like a lot of people in Silicon Valley at the cutting edge of this stuff do believe something like that's happening. However, the feasibility of like a slowdown, like what is I don't even know what that would look like. How would you police that? Do you know what I mean? How would you sort of enforce that? Even if you had some sort of worldwide governing body, these things are moving so fast, and you don't actually need much to. Well, on the one hand, you do need a lot to get started. On the other hand, you sort of don't. So it's a weird combination of effects. I don't really know how that would pan out, but it's very interesting messaging. I do believe personally that the leadership at Anthropic do believe that these things are getting better way faster than they expected. So I can maybe see where some fear's coming from, but it's like you said, Megan. It's an interesting dynamic when that's happening, but they're also publishing as advanced the models as they can. Maybe because they're too scared to get left behind. I don't know. Don't know what you two think.
Yeah, I mean the pressure's going both directions. They can see and are aware of risks, but equally for them and their business model and the commercial pressures they're under, there's a risk for not moving fast enough, and unless there's like a clear alignment across all of the big tech model platforms providers, then they can't act alone to an extent. I would say though, no one really has more power in this than Dario. You know, if anyone was capable of coming to an agreement with each of the respective CEOs of the parties who are really leading in this space, it's him. So yeah, I don't know to what extent him putting.
Even though it's Sam and Elon, I don't think they all get on great. It's my reading of the situation. I like how we're all first name terms with him now. It's Sam, Elon, and Dario.
I noticed that I got his name wrong when I first said it, so I was just overcorrecting, and now first name terms.
Oh no, I like it. No, but it's good. We all know who we mean, right? No, it's interesting. I think you are right. I think I mentioned this in a previous cast, but there's this concept of from the Anthropic safety team and others. They talk about a race to the top. So what they try and do is they try and encourage best practices that they hope other labs adopt, because they see it as actually a differentiator for their products that others will take. So it's a sort of competitive advantage that acts as a sort of meme, gets brought into the ecosystem. So for example, when they talked about constitutional AI, guardrails, and then model cards and stuff like that, these are all concepts that get picked up quite aggressively by the other labs. So I think you're right, Megan. I think Anthropic in particular hold a lot of power, especially as they come up to their IPO and stuff. But it's just interesting because you've got so many kind of takes across the spectrum. I don't think anyone's saying this isn't anything now. I don't think people will say it's a huge bubble, it's overhyped, etc. I don't think anyone's saying this is completely useless as a technology, but you do get everything from that all the way to this is the end of humanity, or this is like the dawn of a new civilization type thing. So it's hard for people to map, and I don't know.
Yeah, I think the thing that I found difficult for a long time is that a lot of the hype, you kind of can't move past it. It drives itself. It's driving these huge IPOs, like the SpaceX story, for example. You see these valuations that are driven very much devoid of the kind of financial metrics being the key factor.
Yeah.
And I think the same is true here of model performance. You can get some idea of benchmarks, and they give you some guide of what kind of relative model to model comparison you can make. They're not necessarily speaking to whether they're going to reach the singularity at X date in the future, or they're not really speaking to the actual point of some of the hype driven statements that are being made. And I think then evidence is having to catch up to the point that he's trying to make. The studies, the kind of academic rigor that you would apply to any other space is having to work at breakneck speed to try and keep up and keep fact checking all the different statements. There was a really good paper published about 2-3 weeks ago by a group of researchers that are starting to try look at the productivity effects using GitHub Copilot users, not even just GitHub Copilot users, GitHub users of any of the different AI tools that are available, and that's a really rigorous study that I think couldn't have come quickly enough. It goes from what is the impact on code, lines of code generation, to what is the impact on the number of pull requests, the number of software releases. They do a app marketplace review of, you know, what impact is it having on apps that actually reach users. Do users engage more? And it's such a good evidence base that I think we've been waiting for a long time, about to what extent is this actually transformative, and are we witnessing something that is absolutely game changing for different sectors and industries and so on. My takeaway from reading that ultimately is no, we're not yet at the point where something that represents a true revolution has happened. And we can talk about that in a bit more detail, but I think there is the hype, the models being released, all of the kind of excitement, energy. You absolutely can't look away from it. It is taking over every one of our lives, professionally and personally. And then there is the governance, the regulation, the evidence base behind that, which is, it feels very slow. You can't rely on it to try and combat misinformation about these topics, because it's just running about a year behind in most cases.
Yep.
Where do you see it going? So obviously the current ban, but how much more powerful are we talking was Fable compared to all the other kind of models that are in production and are being used?
That's the kind of question that I don't think we can answer. Like I said, the evidence is hard to come by. The best quoted stat is the SWE bench, the software engineering benchmark, which takes a 10 plus point step improvement from Fable versus the GPT 5.5, which was the previous leader. That indicates a real step up in the performance against software engineering specific tasks. You know, being able to resolve a GitHub issue relatively independently with very little human oversight. I think that does indicate that there is something quite special about the model, and it is able to, you know, reason over a greater context and do more complicated things. When you start to widen out beyond software engineering, I think it's a bit mixed. I think people are finding generally that Fable maybe kind of overdoes it when it comes to prose. I don't think it's necessarily shown that much competency in like design and less engineering focused tasks. Again, to what extent I can point to benchmarks and lovely evidence, I can't. I'm just going on people having tried it and demoed it themselves.
But you're right, there's a general problem in this. I think like there's been a lot of benchmarking done across models, obviously. There's a great site called epoch.ai that I kind of look at occasionally, that's got really nice diagrams and tons of rich data showing you the trend through benchmarks for all the model families through time, and, you know, token consumption, price per token, all of these metrics. And it's interesting because you see like they come up with a capabilities index that marries a lot together, and the trend goes up, right? But to your point, Megan, it's like there's been a lot of indicative and quantitative feedback, I think, suggesting that these benchmarks don't necessarily represent performance in real life, if you like, in sort of other contexts. And also, it's very hard to pin down what it means for a mod. But there is clearly something going on where, you know, the models when they started couldn't do X, Y, Z. They are able to do more and more. There's also the big debate still going on about, you know, how much are these things memorizing? I think I saw a paper recently that brought that theme back again. Sort of, it was saying that, you know, there was, I'll need to try and dig out, but I think it was just another suggestion, like we've seen before, that actually these things just memorize so much that saying the reason is very difficult. It's actually just, you know, it's a complicated chain of memorization and some inference in there. So there is some interpolation going on, but it's not completely sort of, it's not like you're a blank sheet of paper they're starting from. And you could argue we're not, etc. But I think it's very, very complicated, obviously. But you're sort of asking, Kris, where does it end up going? That's the $1 trillion question, or probably 100 trillion or bigger. There's the scaling hypothesis in general, which Ilya Sutskever, famously ex-chief scientist now, co-founder at OpenAI, etc., said, you know, just make these things bigger, they'll just keep getting better. that seems to have held so far. There are other people that believe, there has to be some saturation at some point, especially in the current paradigm of transformer models, etc. The challenge is both things may be true in different regimes, which is, this is where my physics hat's coming in. Because you think this way as well, Megan, but I was saying everybody confidently, I was like, everything in nature follows an S-curve. Everything in nature follows a sigmoid, right? Exponentially goes up, and then it has to saturate, because you run out of energy, you run out of compute, you run out of space, you run out of something. There's some constraint, right? Even viruses exponentially increase through a population, but then there's not enough population to maintain that spread, so it tails off and it saturates, right? Because eventually either everyone dies or the virus dies out. Same thing has to happen with artificial intelligence at some point, like it does with biological intelligence. The challenge is we don't know where the saturation will be. It could be, once you get to galaxy-sized compute or something, and in that case, it's effectively just exponential. So we don't actually know.
There's two saturation dynamics that I'm interested in. One from a sort of product sense, building things that are to be used by people. It's predominantly what our jobs are when you boil them down a few times.
Yep, reductionist, I like it.
Yeah, oversimplifying in a number of different respects. But ultimately, we still all rely on there being an end user who has a need or some kind of demand for the thing that we're producing. And that ultimately results in a saturation of where we can go to. Now, that is keeping us constrained very much to the world of kind of producing things for a commercial reason or otherwise that users require, and it's not stepping into some of those more philosophical Sam Altman, let's consider the purpose of humanity kind of, and very much keeping us constrained. But at the same time, that is what we are all currently employed to do, is to meet some kind of demand that some user or person has in society. And if there is not that demand any longer, it doesn't matter how smart your AI is. And it doesn't matter how quickly it can solve the problem. If the demand's not there, you're not going to be able to get it out into the world. The second saturation point that I think we see is that it almost doesn't matter how good the solution is if a human can't review and understand it to an extent. Now, I understand that, the review ability of these models is getting better and better, but to an extent, we still don't really trust it to just go completely solo. So we still expect a human ultimately to be able to understand the output. And so we constrain AI and its ability until that point that we think it has absolutely proven itself and the hallucinations have come down to such a significant degree. I think we are so far away from that in terms of my day-to-day experience of using AI. I still check every line. I still find egregious mistakes left, right and centre, even with the best of the best model. And I think that as long as there remains or has to remain a human in the loop, again, AI can only get us so far because we only have so much time to review and we only have so much understanding that we can provide in the review. So I think there are these two very fundamental constraints on how far it can go.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. We should write a paper on this. Saturation dynamics in AI growth or something. This is good.
My last point on that, just to your last point, Megan, and the fact that was that not a part of the call for the slowdown or why Fable's not been released, is that the AI's now doesn't need the support of the human to tell it what's its next task is going to be, or are we getting to a point where it
that again is the message. It's not what it really looks like in reality. No. You're not able to just fling out a product into the world and it get millions of users and everyone's happy. Either you're in a regulated environment where that's literally not allowed to happen, or again, the day-to-day practice of using a lot of these models, they need so many guardrails and refinements to get to be good enough to perform independently. I just think we're quite a long way from not having that as a constraint.
Spicy take back. I actually think the second point you mentioned, I think we're a lot closer to that decoupling than I thought before. So the point about needing humans in the loop. And there's a few reasons I think that. One, I think potentially in constrained domains. So you're right, totally free roaming. You just give it a general vague task, like go build a company. Okay, it'll fall down. But if you get to the point about, write code that does almost anything that you can do in code, I think we are I think I'm personally seeing evidence that the leaps keep coming, and the whole thing about this harness engineering concept and having other agents check the work of agents and stuff. There's kind of you can build in now they're lossy, they're fuzzy verification loops. But if you do enough fuzzy verification loops, you can slightly edge up the chance that you're right. And I think, it gets to the point where actually even a human in the loop is not as effective as just having 10 agents from 10 different model families or something independently review. I can totally see that coming. And you're right, it's going to be a really weird world. I know. I think we're going to go on to talk about the AI and mathematics piece.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect next.
This is the perfect segue, right? Because I think some mathematicians are like, let's push the YOLO button, let's let it go wild, and and then it comes back to us and tries to explain it to us, and we're like, I have no idea what you're doing, but it seems legit. And I can imagine that world. I think the points you've made are totally valid, but I think I can see the second one. I can see his decoupling from human oversight a bit sooner than I imagined. Still don't know when, but I can totally see that.
Oh, perfect segue then. Megan, do you want to take us into the Leiden Declaration?
Yeah, definitely. So this was very exciting to see from my perspective, because there was a declaration written by a working group of mathematicians who are considering the general automation of mathematics and to what extent AI can drive mathematical discovery, and have come out with this declaration that tries to provide a set of principles and guidelines for the wider mathematical community for what we should try and constrain ourselves to, or what guardrails and rules we should put around the use of AI in mathematical research. I was excited because it was signed by my master's supervisor for my dissertation, Professor Ben Green, now at Oxford. It has Terence and other very, very well-known mathematicians as part of the signatories. This is where it comes to, again, quite a philosophical point of what does it mean to do mathematical research. And a lot of the claims around AI's performance in the world of mathematical research has again been overhyped, but there have been genuine breakthroughs in a few different spaces. And the authors are essentially saying that they don't want to ban the use of AI. They can see it as a beneficial tool, but there are some ways in which its use is actively harmful for mathematical research. So they talk about, in particular, the extent to which AI is capable of producing mathematical reasoning or proofs that look robust, but require very extensive evaluation to prove otherwise. So basically, again, AI can confidently get things wrong, and even in fields as kind of rigorous and kind of proof and quantitative as mathematics, it can be very difficult to untease all of that theoretical detail and find where the flaw in the logic is. And so they're finding that it puts a real kind of strain on the community to have these models turn out what look like rigorous mathematical proofs and may contain just a few lines of mistaken logic, but catching that takes the efforts of people that could have otherwise been developing the field in different ways. So that's one aspect in which they're concerned. The other is very much focused on attribution. So a lot of the discoveries that have been made by AI on mathematics fields are a sort of iteration on top of the work of a huge number of human mathematicians, and the ability of those models to accurately point at where they're getting their source material, and also be honest about where the model has soaked up all of that information in terms of scraping journals and getting all of the kind of articles and previous work of people like baked into the model. Again, to maybe that memory point, they just aren't comfortable with the extent to which basically the humans that are doing a lot of the heavy lifting still are not getting credited, or the kind of respect is not being shown by the frontier model developers in the field that are competing with these people. So I found this one of the most exciting developments in the last kind of 6 months in terms of a whole field which has looked like it is the proof point for AI in terms of, if AI can do this, there is no bounds on where it can go. And actually that mathematical community coming back now and saying, well, actually, the benefits are there, but they're constrained, and it needs a lot more rigor in terms of how it's applied and how it's controlled. So it was really, really good to read. I would encourage people to go in, have a good look.
Do you think we'll get to the point, Megan, where, because I suppose that the same idea could apply in all of the sciences probably. Do you think we'll get to the point where we'll have like 2 tiers of science? One is like, done in line with principles like this, and sort of, you say, I'm a Leiden Declaration compliant mathematician, then there's some other people who are just like, nah, there's like a shadow world where it's like, throw everything at the wall, who cares? There's kind of ropey proofs flying around. Or do you think it doesn't work? It probably doesn't work that way in mathematics, pure mathematics as much, but I can totally, see that.
Splits. That's where I think the splits come. So you've already got your division of pure maths and applied maths, and I would say that certainly applied maths is always more comfortable to adopt computational approaches. Pure maths has, particularly in like encryption and cryptography, has got comfortable over the years, but it's certainly less like all-encompassing. The whole field has not been dominated by computational approaches. I think there will just end up being streams, where you can go into research which is heavily adopting of AI and makes extensive use of it, and there will be others where that just isn't the done thing and it doesn't work. So it's interesting to see people like Terence and Ben Green assign this, because they are in a field, combinatorial pure maths fields, which has a heavy use at the moment of both AI and general wider computational methods, and they're essentially saying, yes, in some places totally happy, but it cannot be allowed to kind of work without guardrails and without supervision, essentially.
Oh, it's fascinating as well. It's kind of it's interesting because Terence is like so into AI for maths, and he's like sees it as this total kind of unleashing of potential. And he talked about lowering the barriers to doing advanced maths, and sort of, I read a thing the other day, he was talking about how he thinks that with AI what it'll do is, rather than just kind of automating what we do now, he's like, it'll just mean we could go after such more complex problems, because he says a lot of problems just now, junior mathematicians will think about it and they think, actually it's not worth my effort because it's so much manual effort to get to like the beginning, whereas now they'd be like, actually I can accelerate a lot of that, so I can go after much more ambitious things, which I think is quite powerful. So it's really interesting. He's came to this position.
I think it's a really balanced position. I think when you read it through, again, it's not saying let's never use this. It's just let's harness it in a safe way. And it even speaks to, for example, the risk for more junior or entry level mathematicians, where, if they're not able to kind of grow their skill in the absence of AI at that early stage, I think the question is, can they then go on to these kind of long-standing mathematical proofs that take years and years of effort to get towards?
Wait, just to understand, where is AI being applied in mathematics for a kind of low-level mathematician, as you mentioned there?
Just literally, now what you do is you just ask it. I've got this problem, like Erdős problem, one whatever it was, the one, it's like, it's got a very specific definition. How many, if you grow the number of points in a plane, how many are less than one distance apart or something? They just, basically now you can just give these AI models, the reasoning models, the agents and stuff, statements of that and say, prove it. And because to Megan's point, they've absorbed so much of the previous literature, they can kind of orientate what you mean, and then they just start. And in mathematics, in pure mathematics especially, what you're trying to do is always create a proof. So you're trying to create a series of logical statements that follow from your axioms. So some things you just assume, they're fundamental axioms of maths, and then everything has to logically follow, but it has to be ironclad. So this is the bit that Megan again was talking about in some areas of maths, and especially like theoretical physics. We always made the joke about assume a spherical cow, right? So there's always fuzzy assumptions. But yeah, so now they're sort of just asking it, go for it. You had automated solvers before for proofs that would kind of use specific languages, programming languages, to try and combine logic in specific ways. But these things are now just more, you just sort of ask it. It's my understanding. I don't know, Megan, you've thought about it more.
I think in terms of building out proofs, we're probably at the stage where like the easy ones have been found. A lot of what's difficult about proofs that are on theorems that are as yet unproven or unresolved, is that you're joining together multiple fields where you couldn't expect one human to grasp the whole space, and that is really something that AI is very good at, because it can take in that huge context and pulls together fields that no one had thought to try and bring into the same subject. It has also, though, done things like found counterexamples. You've got theorems which actually cannot be proven, and people have been trying to prove them for decades and decades, and then actually it's just finding one counterexample is like, right, we can throw it away and put it to one side. There's whole fields in applied maths where it's more of a, rather than trying to prove theorems, you're just coming up with statistical models or good enough models that describe the behaviour of the dynamics, rather than an equation that covers the whole system. So there's lots of ways AI can be used in the fields that have enabled it to progress. This declaration is mostly focused on trying to ensure that we continue with proof-based logic that is not, entirely AI generated, in order that people can review it effectively. And I think one of the most important points is that they just want anyone who has made a claim in the field to go through the process of publishing and allowing rigorous peer review. So what I think they're rallying against is that a frontier lab or someone in the kind of commercial sector can make a claim to have proven some sort of mathematical theorem, and rather than having that put into the kind of rigorous academic review process, they just write a blog post about it, and no one in the kind of mathematical community can go at the proof and check its validity. And so they just want almost the use of the established best practice in the field to be held, like everyone to be held to that account, rather than just getting away with making a claim in whatever marketing forum suits them best.
Yeah. But slight sidebar, but on your point about one line going wrong, the story of Andrew Wiles' proof of Fermat's last theorem is amazing on this, right? I don't know if anyone's read the book or seen any documentaries with it, right? So Fermat's last theorem, one of the simplest statements in maths: a to the n plus b to the n equals c to the n. There are no three positive integers a, b, and c that satisfy that equation if n is greater than 2, right? And Fermat apparently wrote in the margin of one of his books, I have a very nifty little proof of this, but I don't have time to write it. And then mathematicians spent hundreds of years telling their hair out, could not do it. This guy, Andrew Wiles, came up with the proof, right? 130 pages long or something. He had to go into all sorts of areas of maths, to your point, Megan. Taniyama, Shimura, Well conjecture, phrase curve, Ribot's theorem, all of this stuff across deep number theory, right? And he publishes the paper. He talks about it at a seminar. I can't remember, the seminar was in Princeton or something. Everyone's so excited. He shares the proof, and there's like one thing wrong in his 130-page proof, and they find it. And it's like, the whole edifice comes crushing down, and there's a race on because everybody else has seen how he's approaching it. And it's such an amazing story. It's a great book by it, Simon Singh, Fermat's Last Theorem. And there's just this mad dash because he's like, I'm so close to being like immortalized in the history of maths. And he goes and he fixes the proof. But it's like, to your point, Megan, right? 130 pages, one statement. If this is true, then this must be true. And someone went, but that's not quite true because of this. And you're talking about AI that, to your point earlier, Megan, just hallucinates crap sometimes. So it's just a fascinating time to be a mathematician, I think. So it's great, but that's an amazing story. I would recommend everybody read that book. It's brilliant.
Very good, very good. Well, I think that's probably about the most we've got time for, unless you guys want to add anything else.
I could go on all day. There's so many stories at the moment, but let's leave it there. I think we've covered all the deep philosophy that we can get away with for one hour.
We've done well. We've went through the depths of number theory. We've went the future of humanity. We've defined saturation dynamics of AI adoption. We've done it all. We've talked about Scotland winning the World Cup. It's good. Excellent episode.
Well, that's where we'll finish on. Well, brilliant. Great to see you both, and we'll catch up again soon.